Hello and welcome to my top reads of 2023, my Booktube Newbie Tag video. I finally decided to do this because I started my YouTube channel kind of a year ago, but I've only posted a few videos, and so I wanted to take part in this tag now that I am committing to posting every week for 2024, and this channel is going to be the main vibe. We're going to go over my top reads of 2023, and then we will get into the Booktube Newbie Tag Questions. So I had a great reading year in 2023. I didn't read as many books as I had planned. I wanted to read 40, only ended up reading about 30, I think. That's okay. I had a busy year, but the quality of books that I read, or at least what I ended up rating all of the books, was very high. I feel like I didn't read a lot of books that I didn't like, and if I did start to read a book I didn't like, I DNF. I am a DNF girly. I don't want to waste my time reading something that I don't like. Sometimes I will read something and I know that it's just not the right time for me to be reading it, not that I don't like the book necessarily, so then I'll just put it aside, pick something else up. That way I can avoid reading slumps as much as possible. I did have a few reading slumps this year, but that's okay. We all experience them. And the whole point of reading is to enjoy ourselves. So forcing yourself to read when you don't feel like it is the exact opposite of that, and we're not about that. First up on my top books of 2023 is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I put off reading this book for so long. If you follow me on Instagram, you know how much I rave about it now that I've read it. If you're not familiar, this book follows our two characters, Sam and Sadie. They are video game designers, or essentially they make video games, and this book does heavily talk about video games, but not in a way that will turn you off if you're not interested in video games. If you haven't read this book yet because you don't think you'll enjoy something that's about video games, pick it up anyway. You will not be disappointed. It's about so much more than video games, and even the portions of the book that are discussing ins and outs of them creating a game are so interesting that I love those parts too, and it made me feel like I wanted to start coding, which I'm not going to. The way they relate video games to storytelling, as someone who is a reader and loves stories, that made me even more interested in learning about video games, to be honest. More than that, this is a book about creative work. It's a book about friendship. It is a book about how sometimes your platonic friendships can be even more important than your romantic relationship. It's about grief. It will break your heart. It'll put it back together. Someone in my DMs actually described this book as feeling like coming home, and that's what the writing feels like. It just feels like you belong in this book, in this world. I don't know how Gabrielle Zevin achieves that, but I'm obsessed with it. And because I was so obsessed with this book, I ended up picking up her other book, The Storied Life of AJ Fikry, and this made it to my top books of 2023. It's a short book, but I highly recommend this, and I know so many of you on Bookstagram have actually read this because of my recommendation and also loved it, so I feel like I can attest and back this up by saying so many people love this book, and I feel like you should give it a try if you haven't already. This book follows our main character, AJ. He runs an adorable little bookstore called Island Books. He is grieving the loss of his wife when he finds basically a child is left in his bookshop, and there's a whole mystery surrounding why this child has just appeared in his bookstore, but the story is so heartwarming, so heartbreaking. This one will make you cry. This one is really sad, but it's really touching, and to be totally honest, I feel like this book is a book for book people. It's a book for people who love stories. It's a book for people who love stories about people. It kind of reminded me a little bit, very lightly, of A Man Called Ova just in the beginning, because AJ is kind of just like a grumpy guy. I mean, grumpy for good reason, but he's honestly kind of a douchebag. But you learn to love him as the story goes on, and then you cry at the end. If you haven't read it, just read it. You'll know what I'm talking about. Another top book of 2023 is Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. I didn't add all of the books to my top books just because I don't feel like they were my top books of 2023, but this one really stood out to me from the series, and I honestly can't stop thinking about the series. I'm currently reading Queen of Shadows right now and filming a vlog of me reading the last half of the series, but from the first half of the series, Crown of Midnight is definitely my favorite. I really feel like this is where the character arcs start to take off. You feel attached to the characters. The plot really starts plotting in this book, and the writing starts to be a little bit less, I don't want to say cringy, but a little less YA or juvenile feeling. And our main character, Selena, for me, I really started to fall in love with her. Not that I didn't like her in the first couple books. I honestly just really enjoyed this one more than Heir of Fire. I know a lot of people prefer Heir of Fire over this one, but something about this and the characters and the relationship dynamics in this really stood out to me. It definitely doesn't top Queen of Shadows. I'm gonna, spoiler alert, I like Queen of Shadows more than this, but this one did make my top books of 2023 because technically technically I'm reading Queen of Shadows in 2024. Another top book of the year was Cleopatra and Frankenstein, book by Coco Malors. As you can tell, I was kind of in my era of starting to read popular book talk books. I don't know if I have anything interesting or new to add to the conversation other than to tell you that if you haven't read it like me and you were putting it off, do give it a try. These characters are super vibrant. Cleopatra is probably one of my favorite characters, even though she's not all that likable. I just feel like these characters literally jump off the page, and from the first couple pages I was so invested in their toxic relationship and how their terrible relationship affects the people around them. It is set in New York City. You follow Cleopatra and Frank as they fall in love, fall out of love, and just basically how their unhealthy patterns and ways of interacting with each other end up affecting their friend group and ultimately their lives. But it's also just a beautiful story, and I feel like something that is a great read if you are in your 20s and just navigating being an adult and navigating relationships. Another one, I read The Invisible Life of Addie Laro by V.E. Schwab. I now have so many V.E. Schwab books on my shelf that I'm ready to read because her writing is so magical. I understand the complaints that this book can be a little bit slow paced, but I think the premise of the book is very unique. I fell in love with Luke in this book, and I know I shouldn't love him, but I do, even though he is the bad guy. But essentially, if you're not familiar with this book, we're following our main character, Addie Laro. She's basically made a deal with the devil, if you will, not literally the devil. I don't really know what you would call him, but he's not a good person or a good being. She makes a deal with him to get out of her arranged marriage in the 1700s, but the price that she pays is that she basically bargains so that she doesn't have to go through with the arranged marriage and she gets to live her life and never age. But the price that she pays is that nobody will ever remember her. But you start the book when someone finally does remember her, and then it's kind of like untangling that line throughout, and you're hopping between what happened before and what's happening currently. And the middle portion does get a little bit slow, but I love the writing so much that it didn't really affect me. And I was also listening to some music. I was listening to a playlist that someone made for this book that just made it so much more vibey and interesting while I was reading it. So I'll highly recommend listening to playlists. There are so many quotes that I underlined. Now I'm just gonna rapid fire some honorable mentions because I wanted to keep my top book small list and then have some honorable mentions that almost made it but weren't quite there, because I don't want them to all be treated equal, if you will, because I feel like sometimes I don't know, but I loved all these books for different reasons. I'm conflicted, if you can't tell. Some honorable mentions would be Fourth Wing, not Iron Flame. I'm gonna be honest, enjoyed it, but it's definitely nowhere near top. Fourth Wing though, I loved. Like, I ate that up. I'm not gonna lie. It's kind of like one of those things that's a guilty pleasure. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I am excited to read the second book. I have it coming from Book of the Month quite soon, actually. Any day now. Could be in my mailroom right now. But that book was beautiful. The fantasy elements were very light. It is a kind of enemies to lovers, but through a magical typewriter story. It's YA. It's really sweet. It's precious. And it's very atmospheric, in my opinion. And also Good Material by Dolly Alderton didn't quite make my top books of 2023. I totally forgot to mention, one of my other top books of 2023 was Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, and that's why this one was an honorable mention, because Everything I Know About Love is nonfiction. It is the book to read if you're in your late 20s to early 30s to mid 30s and you feel like everybody else in your life is getting married, getting the promotion, having babies, and you're just like, what am I doing? It's the book for that. It is gorgeous. It's the book for if you're going through a breakup. Honorable mention, if you're going through a breakup, this is Dolly Alderton's new release that is perfect for people going through a breakup. If you've ever gone through a breakup, it's hilarious. She's always hilarious. It's touching. Basically, this one is fiction, and you're following our main character, Andy, as he's navigating his breakup with his long-term girlfriend, Jen. You do get her perspective at the end a little bit, which I feel like really tied the story together, but it's hilarious. Andy is a bit insufferable in the beginning of this, in my opinion, but I think he's supposed to be. But I highly recommend giving this a chance. I honestly just flew through these pages. Last honorable mention is Six Scorched Roses from the Serpent and the Wings of Night series. I haven't finished the series yet, but I read the first book and then I read Six Scorched Roses, which is the novella that comes in between the two. It's a story in and of itself. I was so attached to the characters. I read it in one sitting because it's so short and quick to get through, but I honestly felt like it could be a standalone story on its own, and I enjoyed it even more than I enjoyed The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which I really did enjoy, and I think I gave a high 4-star rating maybe. I don't think I gave it 5 stars. If you don't want to read the whole series, honestly, try reading that as a standalone. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it could be a standalone. Finally, we're gonna move into the Booktube Newbie Tag Questions. I saw someone else make this video, so I was like, perfect, let's do it. I feel like it'll be a great way to lay the foundation for this channel moving forward. So the first question is, why did you start this channel? Why? Because I love reading, I'm obsessed with talking about books, and my boyfriend is sick of listening to me, so now you guys get to. I also started this channel because I've been sharing my favorite books on Instagram for a while, and I love that community so much, and I wanted a place to make more long form videos where we could talk a little bit more and share more, because I feel like rapidly sharing books on Instagram or in Reels is difficult to get all your thoughts out. And I also just love creating videos and taking photos and creating content. Second question is, what are some of the fun and unique things that you bring to YouTube? Honestly, we're working on figuring that out, because I mean, there are so many booktube channels that sometimes it's difficult to add something new and fresh to the conversation, especially when we're all talking about the same book. So I'm hoping to be better about going to bookstores and picking out books based on the cover synopsis rather than just reading books that I see other people talking about, so that I can bring something new to the table in that way, as well as just bringing my personality, because hopefully it's like somewhat unique. Although it's probably not, because like, let's be honest, we're all the more you watch social media, the more you're like, wow, I did not have an original thought in my brain. Question 3 is, what are you most excited about for your channel? Honestly, just getting to know you guys and getting more book recommendations. Not that I need them, because my list is insanely long, but just continuing to grow this community. And if you're in my area, I do plan on launching a book club again soon, and just connecting with people. I actually went to coffee with someone from Bookscrim the other day, and it was so fun. And we're going to an author event in a couple weeks, and it's just been so fun to make friends and be able to sit down at coffee and just talk about the books that we love. And it felt like we'd known each other for a while because we had so much to talk about already. So I think just growing that, and also having a creative outlet to create fun videos, cute content, take photos, and all of that stuff as well. Question 4, why do you love reading? I've always loved reading from the time that I was a little kid. I still remember to this day the first chapter book that I finished and sat there, and honestly, it was my first experience of a book hangover, because I thought I would never find a book that made me feel that way again. And I did eventually, but I didn't know that at the time. It was my first book. It was a book called Misty of some name, I'll put it on the screen, that I've never been able to pronounce, and I read that when I was probably 7 years old. But I just love being able to escape into someone else's story. I love being able to learn about why people do the things that they do, and I feel like the best way to do that is to read. I love the escapism. I love being able to discover new perspectives and ways of looking at things through books. I feel like I've become more empathetic through reading. I also just love a good story. I'm a sucker for a good story. Number 5, what book series got you into reading? What book series? Ooh, when I was younger, I loved this series called The Enchanted Forest Chronicles. I feel like that Oh, actually, that's a lie. The first book series that I really dived into when I was younger was a series of unfortunate events. Number 6, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? I'm always curious what people feel like behind the camera. Like, how do they feel confident in what they're making? Also, how do they script out their videos? I just love knowing the behind the scenes of how people make and create their content, and how they set up what they're going to talk about. Do they already know what they're going to say about the books? Do they have a script written down of these are my thoughts? I feel like I need to do that sometimes, because my thoughts leave my brain and I'm like, wait, what did I think about this book? What challenges will be the hardest with booktube? Let's be real, keeping up with reading and not falling into the trap of only reading trendy books because you're curious, and not taking the time to discover new reads, which is something I want to work on in 2024. Not that it's bad to read books that other people are recommending at all, but I do think if you're a content creator and you're trying to add to the conversation, adding new books that other people haven't heard about, not just for the sake of it being something no one's heard about, but ones that you genuinely like and find on your own, is a great way to support more authors and also just bring more books into the conversation instead of recycling the same content over and over again. So I feel like that's definitely a challenge and something that I would love to work on. Number 8, when did you start reading? Probably when I was 7 years old. I have taken breaks over the years. In college, I was an English major, and then I kind of fell out of the love of reading for pleasure for a couple years after that, but then I recovered and then dove right back into it and ended up picking up The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo years ago, and it rekindled my love of reading and what reading could be for fun, because I was reading a lot of nonfiction and I had stopped reading fiction as much once I finished my degree, just because I I felt really burnt out, but now we're back in full swing. Number 10, what kind of books do you read? I'll read pretty much anything except for horror because I'm a scaredy cat and I won't be able to sleep. But I love reading books from every type of genre. I will take any recommendations because I'm open to anything, but right now I've been reading a lot of literary fiction and a lot of fantasy. So if any of you guys are new to BookTube and you've made one of these videos, I would love to go watch yours, so be sure to comment down below. Also, let me know what you guys are reading in 2024. What's your first book that you're reading this year? I would love to know, and I will see you guys in my next video.